Hey, this is Russ Thornton with wealthcareforwomen.com. Today I'm excited to have Lisa Meeks back with us. We last spoke, she and I were joking, we can't believe it's been this long ago, but we last spoke in November of 2012. And as a quick reminder, Lisa owns and operates a geriatric care consulting firm in Atlanta called Senior Care Options. So Lisa, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Russ.
So since it's been a while since we've spoken, at least in this format, I know you and I have had several conversations offline, but since it's been a little while, why don't you kind of give us an update on what you and Senior Care Options have been up to? I know you've added some new people and are working on some new things.
Absolutely. Staff is growing. The need is definitely there. So we've hired an additional nurse and an additional social worker. And that way we're better able to meet the needs of the metro Atlanta area. And putting resources back into training and marketing.
Great. So, and I know in addition to adding staff, you've been putting more resources on your website. I've been getting your monthly email newsletter. So it looks like you're also doing more things to leverage kind of digital marketing so more people can find out more about you via your website and other places.
And we've got articles that go onto the websites. We have an emailed newsletter that goes out every month, usually with some topical information. It's informative about health issues that people might not know about, just to be very helpful. And we also have a blog, and it's set up like a question and answer type of format where we take a question we may have received either during an inquiry on a phone call or one of our support groups, something that most people might want to know. They can relate to these kinds of questions, and then we try to give them a helpful answer. So you can track both of those things on the website.
Awesome. Well, speaking of questions and answers, that's something I'm going to come back to in a moment. But before we do, you and I always have really interesting conversations. Always love talking to you and hearing about the richness of the work that you're doing. I mean, clearly it's important work. And as a quick reminder, I don't want to skim over this. Why don't you just kind of give people the Reader's Digest version of exactly what it is you and your company do?
Okay. Senior Care Options is a geriatric care management service. We help families who are thrown into the role of caregiver find the care that they're looking for, advocating for their loved one. It's really about guiding them to make decisions that they can feel comfortable with. There are a lot of choices in the Atlanta market, and it's hard to know just what kinds of care and what other service providers will be beneficial, and we're there to really streamline that process so that families can feel comfortable with these tough choices they have to make.
Yeah, and I can speak personally. Lisa's been a great resource for my family, as well as some of the clients I've introduced her to. I've gotten great feedback, and she's just a tremendous resource. She and her associates, not just in terms of tactical, what do I do now, but also kind of strategic thinking about, down the road, whether that's months or even years from now, kind of planning ahead and having those discussions so you're less surprised by some of the things that, are likely to pop up along the way. With that in mind, Lisa, so 2015 looking forward, what do you see or what have you identified as maybe the biggest challenges facing people as they're looking to care for aging loved ones, whether that's parents, friends, other family members?
The thing that I'm really seeing now is the baby boomers are here. They've hit. And they're coming on at an earlier age than their parents did. So I'm starting to see more people who are in their 70s who are having cognitive changes because of the lifestyle they lived, whatever that might be. But we are seeing a lot more legal drug overuse. So prescribed medications that were for pain or anxiety, but they have been overused for a very long period of time, and they may have caused cognitive damage, some sort of brain damage, or there's just such an, I hate to use the word addiction, but that these clients need these medications, and how can we help them get what they need without overdoing it?
Right.
So we're starting to see a lot of changes in what our clients present like compared to what it used to be 10 years ago.
And when you're referring to cognitive, are you typically talking about like dementia, Alzheimer's type symptoms?
Yeah, some sort of memory or thinking impairment. We're starting to see a lot of prefrontal cortex changes in folks who have overused substances, and their decision making and their lack of insight seems to be more prevalent than it used to be. So it's not just that they don't remember the date, they also are really using very poor judgment about things, and they may be very impulsive in their behaviors, a lot of pleasure-seeking behaviors.
Is there, not to get too far off into the weeds, but is there a any tips you have or suggestions? So maybe friends, family members, professionals that are working with this aging population, where they can be maybe a little bit more sensitive to the warning signs. I mean, clearly it's not uncommon for someone to, forget a date or things like that. But
Right.
Is there a good way to kind of look for patterns or look for, symptomatic behavior that might lead one to contact family or contact someone like yourself to
Right.
seek more resources?
Well, that's a great question. One of the first signs that you may see is when people are no longer able to do more complex tasks that they maybe did in the past. Paying their bills is usually a great indicator. Following up with medical appointments, anything that has a little bit more tasks to complete the entire goal or the entire project that is no longer happening. Over the holidays, a lot of people may have seen that their family members were not able to either shop and wrap and get gifts to where they were supposed to be, or prepare a big meal. Easter is a couple months away. It's coming around the corner, but having a large meal and shopping and preparing and getting the timing right is really quite complex. And when you start to see changes in behavior that weren't there before, those are usually early indicators that something's happening.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And instead of just focusing on challenges that people face, do you see or have you identified maybe an opportunity for these same people to better equip themselves, to be more proactive? Clearly, they can reach out to you, and we'll tell folks a little bit how they can do that. But are there other maybe opportunities that you've seen or coached people on where they can be a little bit more proactive, as opposed to waiting till something gets to the point where they're kind of almost in crisis mode?
It varies from person to person, so it can be a really challenging thing. That the family dynamic is a very interesting entity. I encourage people to have difficult conversations earlier rather than later. Yes, taking the keys away is a difficult conversation, but if you can engage that loved one into making choices for themselves, perhaps you can get them to have some insight and to make some good decisions going forward. Now, there are certainly times that people are very stubborn and they don't want to have these discussions. And the challenging thing that I'm learning as I keep going is you can't make anybody do anything.
Right.
You can have the discussion, you can bring it up, but ultimately you can't make people do things. So that's tough.
Yeah. So back to, you mentioned earlier that you guys on your website are now posting articles, and on the blog you're kind of doing things in a Q&A format. And I'm always interested, every time I talk to you, one of the first questions I ask is, what are one or two kind of questions that come up either frequently or are the first questions that are asked of you when you're first introduced to someone, or someone first finds senior care options and begins a dialogue with you?
I think one of the most common things that we're asked is, or that families know there's a cognitive change, that there is some kind of dementia happening, and they maybe haven't had a diagnosis yet, which we're not able to do, but we can get them to the right doctors to do that. but they don't think it's time to get a diagnosis. And I think that's a faulty thinking. If you're noticing a change and it's going to fluctuate, then you have to get a baseline. Where are we starting from? They can only measure against a starting point. So it doesn't hurt to go ahead and establish a baseline. But I get families a lot of times who think, well, we don't really need that yet. And I'm thinking, you're not calling me just to talk. I'd love to talk to you. You're calling me because you are feeling some pain somehow. And it is time to do something.
And that kind of goes back a moment ago. We were talking about maybe being a little bit more proactive and instead of waiting for things to fester and get bad. Because you've told me, and this is another conversation for another time, but you've told me a lot of times you get the call when people are already kind of in crisis mode.
Oh, yeah.
What do we do now?
Oh, yeah.
And clearly anything they can do to not have the sirens going off, so to speak, is beneficial for everyone.
You make better decisions. You absolutely make better decisions. We're learning more and more about the brain. Not that we know everything, but when we are in a crisis situation, we are not thinking clearly. So it's nice to have an outside person who understands aging, understands dementia and brain failure to guide you. But when you are in that crisis mode, you don't make the best decisions. You need somebody to be your eyes and ears.
Yeah. Awesome. Another question maybe come to mind that you hear a lot or that frequently comes up in initial conversations with folks?
A lot of people think that their loved one is not going to talk with us, that if they may want to engage our services for their parent. For instance, we have a lot of adult children that call us and they're inquiring, but they just don't think that their family member, their mom or their dad, is going to speak with us. And they don't know how to introduce bringing care management in. My philosophy is it's better to not say too much, that the concept of care management is pretty abstract. We really are here to help. We want to see what's working. We want to see what's challenging, and how can we make that better so that you have better quality of life and you live longer. And most people, even if we pared that down just a little, we're just here to help. We want to make things better. That's all they want to hear. And they do want that. And we have very, very rarely run into a time that somebody would not let us in or talk to us. We've been doing this now 14 years, and I think it's happened 3 times out of the hundreds of people that we've evaluated.
Okay.
That they wouldn't let us in. So that's one of the common things that the family members are thinking, my mom's not going to talk to you. Yes, she will.
Yeah.
She will absolutely talk with us.
Well, and it's probably helpful for a lot of adult children to bring you in as an objective third party, because it's probably easier for you to introduce and get some of these topics on the table, whereas it's much more difficult for an adult child to approach, his or her mom or his or her dad and talk about, all the things that you deal with on a regular basis. So,
well, we have no baggage, and we don't necessarily have an agenda.
Right.
We want what's best for that individual. We want them to be safe, and we want them to be content. I'd love happy, but sometimes I can't promise happy. But it's nice, to have that objective person. It's not my family member. They can't push my buttons. And it's interesting that the family they may know the right thing, but because it's coming from them, that their parent won't listen to them. And it's just an interesting dynamic to have the objective person come in. Really makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, I imagine so. Before we start to wrap up, Lisa, anything else that you'd like to share with folks that are watching this?
Certainly. One of the things that I'm very excited about right now is that I'm working on being a certified trainer and a certified consultant with Positive Approach to Care. It's TIPA SNO program that's gone national. It's a PAC. And I'm working towards 2 certifications just to further bolster my skills.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
And what's the timeline on that when you think you'll have that accomplished?
The training should be accomplished probably by the end of this month, and the consultation certification probably in another 4 weeks.
Okay, awesome. And you mentioned it's TIPA SNO?
Yes.
I know you've mentioned her to me before.
Yes.
Spell her name for people in case they want to look her up or maybe learn a little bit more about what she's doing.
Sure. It's T as in Tom, EEPASNOW.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So, Lisa, clearly, I'm a big fan, as are some of my family members and my clients. For folks that don't know or haven't had the pleasure of working with you and your company, what's the best way people can find you, learn more about you?
Well, certainly the website has a lot of information. I don't want people to be overloaded, but it's a great place to start. www.seniorcareopt.com, or you can always call us at 770-579-9177.
Awesome. Lisa, this was fun. I'm glad we did it, and hopefully we'll do it again soon, and not let a little over a year pass by.
Absolutely. Thanks, Russ. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Russ Thornton with wealthcareforwomen.com. I had a great time talking with Lisa Meeks from Senior Care Options, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.